Sunday morning, right? All right. It was a little cool this morning. I don't know. I'm Ryan Butler. I'm one of the volunteers around here. I'm so excited to be up here getting to share with you guys today. A little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a father. I have 3 boys. I have Stephen, high school. He's a freshman. I have Daniel, who is in middle school. He's in 6th grade. And then I have Joshua, who is a kindergartner. He is 6, which is awesome. He is obviously not our planned child, but he is our... I know, yeah, we purposely didn't spread them out like that. We don't need to explain how that happens. But yeah, so we have Josh, and he's amazing. He's great. He will live with us by himself for years, and that's awesome. And then many of you guys know my wife, Angela Butler. She is the children's director here at Mission, and she does an awesome job with that. So, and kind of my background, I've always done youth. Middle school, high school, I do that here at Mission. So if you have a middle schooler or a high schooler and they don't attend youth group here, you need to get them there. It's awesome. We have a great time. And that's kind of where all my experience is I've taught little youth groups, large youth groups, and everything in between. And I really love that age group because you can influence them to go out and share the love of Jesus with so many people because they have the largest mission field every day of every week that they go to school. And for them to be able to show the love of Jesus through the way they act, the things they say, the things they don't say, the things they don't do, that's exciting. That's exciting. So be able to go up and teach them and encourage them to go out and share the love of Jesus with others is exciting to me. And I love that. I love youth. That's when my friend invited me to church, is when I was in junior high. And I can't thank him enough because who knows where I would be today if it wasn't for him. And I want our students to be able to do that to someone else. And that's awesome. So that's kind of my experience. I've always, that youth has always been the thing that I really and truly love. So a few weeks ago, Kyle came to me and was like, hey, we're in between kind of series here, and I want you to teach. And I'm like, sweet, I like doing it. And I'm like, what do you want me to teach on? And he says, I could do whatever I want. Like, for those of you who know me, like, give me an open slate like that. It's like, sweet, I can do whatever I want. So I was thinking this week, I'm like, what are some things that I really struggle with? So I decided we're going to talk about what I really struggle with. I think that'll be easy and it'll be fun. And I'm almost positive we all struggle with distractions in our life, right? We live in a world of distractions. The whole world is one big distraction now. Each day, I live out in Verrado, and I work in downtown Phoenix, and each day I get on the freeway and I drive to work. And those of you who do that as well, like I-10 at about 83rd Avenue every day, it comes to just a stop. It's depressing every day, and there's nothing you could do about it. You just like crawl at like 3 to 5 miles an hour from that point to wherever you're going. And during that, I use that time to watch what crazy things people are doing in their cars. So I really paid attention to that the last few weeks while I was thinking about this message. We've seen this, right, while they drive, finishing up whatever you binge watched on Netflix the night before, right? Because if something was to happen, you're only rear-ending someone at like 3 miles an hour. Because as you're driving, you see just like cars pulled off to the side of the road where there was just little fender benders because, no one's going fast. Everyone's hitting each other at 3 miles an hour. It's like bumper cars. But it's interesting because you see that and you see people talking on their phones. You see people eating cereal. I don't know. I've seen that. What else? There's just crazy things, putting on makeup. Like we live in a world that we're so distracted, that it's so hard for us to really focus on anything. And that's what I want to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about this guy in the Bible. His name is Peter. Peter, and if you've read through the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you see little glimpses of Peter. Peter's like the spokesperson for the disciples. It's like the disciples get together and they come up with a crazy idea and they're like, Peter, you should go ask Jesus. And you see that like throughout the Bible where Peter comes up and asks Jesus like crazy questions. And the rest of the disciples have got to be like sitting in the background like, we got Peter to do it again, you know? So we're going to talk about Peter today and how he got distracted. So we're going to look at that in just a second. Let me pray, and then we will get started in this. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this time each week we get to come spend with you. And Lord, I just pray that over these next few minutes, Lord, you open up our hearts and our minds and you teach us. You teach us what we need to hear, what we need to take and apply to our lives, and then teach us how to go and love the people around us better. Lord, we love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, so we're going to start in Matthew chapter 14, and just to kind of give you, it's in your notes, it'll be up on the screen so you can follow along, but just so you know, what I'm going to tell you in just a second, I didn't do it on purpose. This was on accident, probably because I was distracted, but your notes are backwards, you know, so we're going to start with internal and then go to external distractions. I didn't plan that. It kind of fits, but wasn't planned. So we're just going to run with that today. So we're in Matthew chapter 14. We're going to start in verse 22 and kind of give you what happened just before this was Jesus was feeding 5,000. And he's getting ready to send the disciples away. And that's where we're kind of picking up in verse 22. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd being the 5,000. After he dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat had already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Verse 25, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Verse 28, the Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, here we go, here's Peter, tell me to come to you on water. Come, he said, and then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. Verse 30, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? Just real quick. In verse 30 there, this is going to be for later, but I want you to underline, beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. So just underline that real quick. We're going to go back to that a little bit later. So underline that. So in verse 32, it says, and when he climbed out of the boat and the wind died down, those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. You see, in what we just read was, Jesus he put all the disciples in the boat, and he sent them out onto the lake, into a storm. And he said, I'll catch up with you guys a little later. And then later that night, Jesus starts walking on water towards the boat, and they freak out, thinking it's a ghost. Jesus tells them, no, it's just me, you're good. And Peter asks, hey, can I get out of the boat? I want to walk on water too. And it kind of plays into this idea of who Peter was. And Peter gets out of the boat and he begins to walk towards Jesus. And then he notices the wind, he notices the storm, and he gets distracted. He loses focus on Jesus and he begins to sink. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is that idea where we get distracted. We lose focus on Jesus and then we begin to sink. I think it parallels with our lives so closely in so many different ways. Where sometimes we don't ever even intend to do it, but it just happens. And we don't know why. So today we're going to look at internal distractions and external distractions. Things in our lives that, and specifically I picked some that I deal with personally. Maybe yours are totally different than mine. But I want to start by looking at our internal distractions. And your first fill in the blank there is fear. Fear. You see, some of us are sitting there today, and when we look at the idea of fear, it's fear being a distraction. It's fear being something that keeps us from being focused on Jesus. Some of us, we would have never gotten in the boat to begin with, right? There's some of us that we would look at that rickety old boat and the other 9 dudes that are getting ready to get in it, and the storm and the waves, and we would go, I don't think so, Jesus. I'm not getting in that boat. Are you crazy? I'm just going to sit right here on this rock. It's safe right here. I'm just going to sit down right here on this rock where it's safe, and I'm going to play in the sand, right? Like, I'm not getting in that boat. I'm not going to do that because we let fear drive us. You see, the problem with that is there's only 2 people in recorded history that have ever walked on water, Jesus and Peter. There's times in our lives we miss out on things because we're scared. We're not ever going to go do them. We get distracted by the fear in our lives. There's this guy I know that every time we go to an amusement park, he never got on any roller coaster. He'd look at you and be like, nope, I don't think so. Because he'd sit and play through his mind all the absolutely terrible things that could happen. Right? You're looking at it, it's going fast, it's doing loops. I'm going to fall out of that. Right? We play through our minds all these things that could possibly happen, and they distract us. Our fear distracts us from ever being focused on Jesus, and we have to be so careful of that. Because that truly is an internal distraction. So your first one is fear, your second one is ego. Ego. We live in a world that's all about me, about number one. How great is number one? How great am I? Right? We live in a world of selfies. It's crazy. What are people saying about the picture I took of me or what's going on in my life? What are they saying? One of the greatest videos I've ever seen is about a football player named Terrell Owens. Anyone you remember Terrell Owens? Anybody? Right, yeah, he played for the Niners, he played for the Eagles, and he played for Dallas. Maybe someone else, I don't know. That's all I can remember off the top of my head. But this guy, he was all about him. If you get on YouTube, there's like a 1-minute compilation video of Terrell Owens being awesome. And it's all him talking about himself being awesome. And in this video, he says time after time after time, I'm gonna love me some me. Man, I'm gonna love me some me. I love me some me. And he's flexing and he's acting crazy, right? He loves him some him. You know what him can never do? Him can never really focus on Jesus because he's so focused on himself. It's crazy. Obviously, that's a very, very extreme example. But there's so many times we're so focused on what's best for us, we can't ever really focus on what Jesus wants for us. And we're totally distracted by that. And it's so true. Like, I look at things in my life, I'm like, where's this ego portion play in my life? And it's tough. Because what we realize is there's times in our lives where there's us and there's the world. And we want the world to revolve around us. Around number one. Right? Meant like the crazy ego guy that like will look at you and be like, you know what? I hope tonight when you go to bed, you lay your head down on the pillow and you close your eyes and you dream about one day being as awesome as me. Right? You ever met that guy? You're like, what in the world is wrong with you? Right? It's like, what's going on? Our ego keeps us distracted where we can never truly focus on God because we love us too much. So we have fear, we have ego. Last one is conflict. Conflict. You know, I'm talking about the type of conflict that keeps you up at night. You know, where you're replaying that scenario of whatever happened in your mind over and over and over again, where you keep playing on the idea of what should have I said, what shouldn't have I said, what should have I done, what shouldn't have I done, right? Have you ever been there? I've been there where it keeps me up at night, and I'm like, what really happened in this? And it's crazy because we allow these conflicts in our lives, we don't realize it. And we look back and there's times we let time pass. And it ends up we don't even remember what really even happened in the first place. But we allow this conflict with someone else to fester, and we never really take care of it. And we think that, you know what, if we lift up the rug and we just kind of sweep it under it, right? We put the rug back down, that everything will be cool. Or that, you know what, if we just let time pass, it'll just kind of go away. And it doesn't. That conflict, it keeps us distracted, where we're never really focused on God. You see, Peter, I think it's in Matthew chapter 18. I'm sure the disciples had something to do with this. You know, hey, go ask Jesus. And Peter goes up and he asks Jesus, how many times do I have to forgive somebody? Remember this? 7. And Jesus replies, like in sarcastic Jesus. Like, I'm not sure you can read that part in the Bible, but you can almost feel like the sarcastic Jesus answer in this. No, 70 times 7, Peter. That's how many times you forgive somebody. Right? And that plays into this. Like, there's times we just need to forgive people and we need to move on because it's keeping us distracted. And it's so very dangerous. So fear, ego, conflict, we're going to move on. External distractions. The first one is work. Work. This one's hard because this one kind of toes the line between being a good employee, going in, doing your best, representing Jesus there, and spending too much time there where we're the first one's there, last one's to leave, working on Saturday, bringing stuff home, right? And it's so hard, and so many of our jobs have that portion to it where it's like we need to focus and really think about what's the most important. You know, and really stop and think about that where we're not trying to please everybody, but where we're starting to focus on what really matters. And it's so hard. I know, because with my job too, where you toe that line of being the good employee or being there too much, and what is that affecting in my life, in my family, and it's tough. It's tough because you don't want to be the workaholic, but you want to be the good employee. You want to be the hard worker, and it's so hard. Teachers do it all the time. Teachers work an insane amount of hours. And it's great, but there has to be that middle line of going in early, last one to leave, bringing work home, working on the weekends. Like there has to be that middle line, and it's hard to find, and that's something that, you know what, maybe you need to sit down and just pray, like, God, help me with this. Like, where is this line in my life? Where does that land? Because it's very, very difficult. Where is that? Because work can be a distraction. Work can be a huge distraction. So we have work. The second one is busyness. If you're a family with kids, like, you know what I'm talking about, right? Especially as they get a little older and you have sports and you have dance and you have choir and you have band and you have piano and you have this and you have that, and you're taking kids here and kids there, and you're praying for the day that your oldest is old enough to drive so you don't have to do this anymore. That's where I'm living right now, is that I can't wait till my oldest is old enough to drive so I don't have to drive him around anymore. Right, in our house right now, I have Stephen playing high school baseball. I have Daniel playing his last year of Little League majors, and he's going to make his middle school team, and Joshua's playing coach pitch. That's 4, and like, who do you say no to, right? It's like, oh my gosh. So we're driving here, we're driving there. My wife and I were like sitting down looking at our calendar, like, and with my parents involved, like, how are we getting everyone where they need to be? And it's hard. Busyness like drives our lives. But there's one thing I've always told my kids, is that church is always a priority. I want church in your life to always be a priority. You will be here on Sundays. You will be at youth group on Wednesdays. That is a priority in our house. Can we make everything else work around it? We will do our best, but that's a priority. And they know that going in. That no matter how busy this gets, church is a priority in our house. And they'll tell you that right from the beginning. I will drag them out of bed. They will come to church like that's the way it goes. No, they like coming to church. I'm just joking. But it's true. To look at church being a priority. Because you know what happens? We get real busy. And we miss a Sunday. And then we come the next Sunday, and then maybe we miss another couple Sundays. And then a couple more, and we don't go to small group, and we don't do this. And we slowly start to drift away. And it's nothing that happens overnight. It just slowly happens, just happens gradually, and we get farther and farther and farther away. Our habit is now not a habit anymore. Right? I've been there, and it's so hard, where you just slowly drift away, and you turn around and you look back, and you wonder how you got here, because you used to be way over there. Work, busyness, the third one, it's so great, best for last, our phone. Our phone. You laugh. I'm not the only one with this problem. There's no way, because remember, we're talking about some of these being my problems. I'm not the only one, right? Yes, just shake your heads, everybody, you know, right? I'm not the only one with this problem. You know what the problem with this is? If you have an iPhone, it's the latest iPhone update that came out. At 9:24 every Sunday, I get this little message on my phone that tells me the average amount of screen time per day I have on my phone. It ruins my day. It ruins my day. I look at this, I'm like, you would never allow your kids to have that much screen time. I realize I use my phone for work, but come on, man, right? It's crazy. We're so distracted by our phones. There's times, I think it's only happened to me once, that like my wife will be talking to me, and I'll be looking at my phone, and I just answer. Dude, guys, you know. Right? You know, you just answer, yeah. And you're not really even sure what you're answering. And then she'll come back and ask you if that's done that you said yeah to. And you don't even know what yeah was for. Right? We've been there. We've all been there. And it's like, what in the world? And we're so distracted by it. Like we always have to check. We always have to look. And then like they threw in the Apple Watches. Oh my gosh, now it tells you everything that's going on your phone, in your pocket, on your wrist. And now it's even more of a distraction. It's constant. We could never focus on Jesus when we're so distracted on everything else. Could you imagine if your Bible told you once a week how much time you spent on average per day there? Yeah, everyone's like, oh, please don't invent that. It's true, and it's so sad. It's so sad. We're so distracted by these things in our lives. And the crazy thing is, most of it doesn't even matter. Most of it doesn't matter. And when you look back and you want to stay focused on Jesus, because this is what happened to Peter. Peter was completely focused on Jesus, walking towards him. And then he looked around, and there's these storms, there's this wind in his life that's slowly causing him to sink. And that's us in a lot of these things. Like I said, it's one of those things that happens gradually and we don't even really realize it until we stop and look at where we're at. And we turn around and go, man, I'm so far from where I was. So those were mine. Those were mine. Fear, ego, conflict, work, busyness, and phone. Maybe you're like, Ryan, that's not any of mine at all. That's not my distraction. I'm big into crocheting. Whatever it is in your life, I gave you a spot there to fill that in. Fill that in. So put your distraction, because the thing is, there's so many times in our lives that we just need to write it down. We just need to say, hey, this is my problem. This is it. I just need to put pen to paper and admit to it. And it's hard sometimes to put pen to paper and admit to it that crocheting is your huge thing keeping you from God. You see the crazy thing in all this? Jesus, he's constant. Jesus never moves. He never leaves. He stays the same. He's always there. It's us. We're the ones that move. We're the ones that get distracted. We're the ones that slowly tiptoe away for one reason or another. Not him. He's always, always there. Because there's times in our lives we turn around and we think, man, I'm sinking. I'm sinking. And what's our first reaction in that? God, where are you? Where were you in this? Right? Like, what's going on? And he's looking at you like, you're the one that left. I'm right here. You're the one that left. I've always been right here, same spot all the time. I never move. I'm always constant. I'm that thing in your life you can always depend on. I'm right here. You're the one that moved. See, probably 6 years ago, I went on a trip to Virginia to interview for a youth job there. And I was gone for a few days. And when I was coming back, I was walking down the terminal. And I'm just on the other side of security, you know, where you're not allowed to go when you pick up people from the airport. And I see my middle son, Daniel. And Daniel's like 6. And if you remember Daniel at 6 years old, he's like a bowling ball with legs. Right? Like, dude could run, like you're not going to stop him. And I remember, like, I dropped down on one knee, like I saw him coming, I dropped down on one knee, and he ran past the security and just jumped in my arms and gave me a big hug, and he said, Dad, I love you, and I missed you. And I said back to him, Daniel, I love you, and I missed you too. This is Jesus in our lives. No matter how far we drift away, he's always going to be right there, down on one knee, saying, you know what, I missed you, and I'm glad you're back, and you know what, I love you. And I'm this consistent thing in your life. Doesn't matter what you have going on, I'm right here. And man, I'm glad you're here, I'm glad you're back, because I love you and I missed you. You see, Jesus doesn't love us because we're good. He loves us because he's good. And when we make that transition in our life, where we know that it's not us, it's him. That he doesn't love us because we're good, he loves us because he's good. That's when things change. So I think it's like, what's your distraction? What is it? As you guys saw today, mine is a whole list. And I'm sure a lot of us, the list I had, a lot of that's us. I can't believe I'm the only one in that boat. See, there's some of us sitting here today who never experienced that Jesus. That Jesus that drops down on one knee, gives us a big hug, tells us that he loves us and that he missed us. And I want to tell you, if you're sitting here today and you don't know that Jesus, make today the day that you say yes to him. That you go, you know what, I want to be in that relationship with you where you're always constant, you're always there, you're never going to let me down, you're going to love me no matter what. You're going to love me not because I'm good, but because you are. And I hope today is that day. And if you're sitting there today and you're even remotely thinking about that, come up and see some of the prayer team people after service. Talk with them. They'd love to share more about that. In just a second, the band's going to come up and they're going to play this one last song. And it's so fitting for today because the title is the You Never Change. And one of the lyrics in the song is, it talks about, who will I run to? Who will I run to? And then it goes on, it says, Jesus, you're all I need. You see, we distract ourselves with things we don't need. When we really need Jesus. And I think for most of us, that's not anything like earth-shattering good. Like, you already know that. But there's times we just forget. And we have to be reminded of that.